So, I've talked about this before, but still, it's worth repeating, in my opinion, that it seems so weird, if not so unusual, that nowadays, especially in the past several years, a lot of creative writers out there, and not just writers, but creative artists that use all kinds of work, if you will, all kinds of artistic tools to work with. One of the most prominently lately has been what's known as the SFM CGI 3D modeling. Well, basically, obviously, they draw up what they're going to create first through a software, and then they use the 3D modeling of that software to bring it to almost to near CGI style, if you will. Basically, near CGI qualification from a 3D standpoint. And for some odd reason, it really works. And a lot of these artists are also now testing out animations with this software to see if maybe and perhaps they could take it to the next level. But one of the common traits, if you will, one of the common traits that, you know, a lot of these stories that use different art styles from just typed up, written, if you will, to basically, you know, like I said, the CGI, SFM, 3D rendering software, the one thing I've noticed a lot of them have in common is shapeshifting. And not just any kind of shapeshifting either. Most of them involve malleability, elastic, you know, shapeshifting, and sometimes nano liquefaction slime girl like shapeshifting. You know, that's what they all have in common. They have something in common that's basically, you know, identical to what each other's stories are about. Not storyline-wise being identical, but basically the concept, the characters, if you will. You know, and what capabilities, abilities they have. And I was just watching out the window there because we always have cats that like to come around, and they like to kind of make our grass and tan bark, you know, the property, if you know what I mean. But anyway, getting back on point, a lot of these stories, like I said, the only similarity or identicalness that they have is the characters have identical powers, similar powers. And, you know, there's several that I've talked about, in my opinion, that really stand out. In fact, I've even mentioned them in my top 5 fan fiction stories that you guys should be reading or looking at. Well, now some of these, I will say this, some of these actually you have to look on Patreon to, you know, get a glance at. And sometimes it doesn't cost too much to get a glance. Sometimes it could cost maybe $1 to $5, 10 at the most, and that's fine, not a big deal. But again, the one thing, like I said, that they all seemingly have in common, if you will, you know, is the fact that the powers, the abilities, if you will, of each of these characters, you know, is identical in scope. It's identical in scope in a major way. For example, when I look at Nanoshift, which is by Joven 16, if you will, I look at a story that has been going on for a while, but is really coming into its own thanks to the shape-shifting character that it has. Mostly the liquefaction, shape-shifting, nanobot situation that the character is involved in. Long story short, the character basically was transformed into having a now nanobot infected body, to where now the body's not flesh and blood anymore, so basically technically they're no longer organic, and they can become anyone or anything they want to be. In fact, they even dedicated a couple of, I would say, pages, if you will. I would say about, 20 pages, if you will, almost a comic book worth length, to where the character learned through one of her alter egos, basically the nanobots disguised as one of her alter egos, that she has the power in her hands to do whatever she wants, to become anyone she wants, to become anything she wants. And as we've seen in recent chapters, if you will, she's proven that not just to herself, but to her friends. And she's proven it by basically, and this is going to be crazy to say, enveloping her friends, absorbing her friends. Not absorbing them to where like they become a part of her or anything, like that. No, we're talking envelopment and absorption to where she covers them, and through her new powers and abilities, she alters their appearance. And not just their appearance, but she can alter certain parts of them physically, even internally as well. And that's what she does. I mean, one of the friends, when they saw what their appearance was like and what the voice had changed into, looked down and they asked the friend, her name is Jay, by the way, in the story, they asked, "Am I wearing you?" And Jay basically nonchalantly is like, yeah, I guess you are. So she has the ability to do all this, as well as do it with another friend of theirs, as well as even reconstitute herself with a different appearance at the same time. But it's not the only thing she's able to do. She's also able to, if she wants to have total relaxation, melt down into a liquefied puddle, and that's it. And sometimes even she could change herself into an inanimate object or vehicle. Now, where the story goes to next is totally up in the air. A lot of us are guessing that the next evolution of her powers is she's going to take her friends that she's infected and she's going to basically fuse with them. Well, I wouldn't say technically fuse, but she's going to pull what I would consider an Alex Mack during the final season of the sequel world of Alex Mack cartoon, when her powers start to really evolve and she could morph into liquid, not just herself, but anybody she touched. Like her sister, like her best friend Ray, like her parents. I've got a feeling that's where we're heading here with NanoShift, with the NanoShift series. But the NanoShift series on Patreon is not the only one there that goes this route. We also have Pink Benefits as well. And it involves two characters that basically they basically have identical powers. The only problem is one is a little ahead on the game, if you will, of the evolution of her powers, because there is one chapter or one section in the story where she basically it kind of shows it's kind of in this section, begins from a cliffhanger left off from a previous section. But in this one particular section of the story, Pink Benefits, the character basically looks at the fact that she's become some kind of slime girl. She basically looks at the fact that her body is completely all translucent pink, and then it's the whatever substance that now she has as part of her powers, that's like a subconscious in her that's saying, hey, you can do more with your powers than just change your appearance or change your clothes and all that. You can become anything, not just anyone. And she starts moving her arm around, it's kind of demorphing and changing into like a tendril, if you will, and it's like, you see the potential they're going to go with there. You see the potential they're going with there. And there are several times already in recent chapters where they teased the possibility of that happening. Another one by the same person is called Agent Pink, and it's called Bedlam's Revenge, and it crosses over with Mr. Internet Man's Demonica character. Now, they haven't done anything along the lines of liquid shapeshifting or anything like that, but I think we're getting to that part real soon. I could be wrong, but I believe we're getting to that part. It's just a matter of, how and when we get to it. Then, there's some of the one-offs as well. Like one of the things I put here on my channel was a section from Joven16, who's the one behind NanoShift, if you will, and a few other stories. But Joven16, this past summer, or during this summer, added a little section of, based on his character, Amber, who he introduced at DeviantArt during a series of stories that he had wrote up. And Amber basically is a shapeshifter. She's gained abilities to become anyone or anything she wants. She's even gained the abilities to not only become anyone or anything she wants, but also the ability to kind of give those personalities, a la Mr. Internet Man's Demonica character, their own personalities. Period. Like, it's her, but she's acting in a way that you don't even know it's her. Like, even if she was to encounter herself, she wouldn't even know it's her. But this one comic that they did, she pulls a Demonica. She basically melts down into a puddle, if you will. Basically embraces how good it feels, if you know what I mean. And then she splits herself in two. And all three of these women that she basically splits herself into have their own personality and acknowledge who is their mistress, as they call her, who they were created from, and everything, and explain why they're there. But it's not just the stories on Patreon either. We have, of course, Jackal-Adores, Metamorphosized to Malleability, which I've talked about numerous times, and you have to check it out. I mean, this is a story that's evolved from where it started with its character. Its character has evolved with it as well to where it is now. I mean, there were shifts, chapters, if you will, I should say, earlier on in the story to where when Briella, the one that's the central focus of the story that has these powers, when she would change herself into something that wasn't human or something that was a different identity, that the longer she remained in that position or in that form, the more she would think she was that form. Now, they did give a good explanation in some following chapters later on, where she nearly got stuck being a dog forever, and she had to be reminded, hey, you're not a dog, you're human, and through her friend she was able to restore herself. And as a follow-up, they have her admit to her friend, Ilana, that when she decides to become an inanimate object, that, she's always had this idea that if you're going to embrace yourself, or that if you're going to disguise yourself as some kind of inanimate object, that the best thing to do is to go all the way and become the object, embrace the form you're in and become it. And basically she admits that she's still working on it, because the longer she remains in that form and embraces it and becomes that form, the more she would kind of lose herself. But lately she's evolved to the point that she could take bits and pieces of herself and and turn these bits and pieces of herself into inanimate objects, and it wouldn't affect her. It wouldn't affect her one iota, if you know what I mean. It wouldn't affect her, period. And I just checked that over here. But like I said, it wouldn't affect her, period. Not one iota. But in the beginning it did. Another story that she's working on is because, is called The Unlimited Story. And like I said in our review, we have now just gotten the 8th chapter, the 8th part of it. And wherever the 9th part goes to in the future is totally up to what comes to her mind from a story perspective. But the Unlimited Story again is in this falls into this category, but this time it's a dude that gets what they describe as Clayface-like powers. But because of the fact that he, from a personal standpoint, is going through a lot still, reeling off of a lot of things that have happened, he seems to prefer going into a more feminine form. And because of that, he ended up creating 2 different feminine characters that, in the 7th part of the story, or the story series, developed life of their own, split from him, literally, almost, erased him from existence by doing so. But as we find out in the more recent chapter, he survived, and we find out that basically the more recent personality that he gave life to, called Cindy, is growing weak. And that because she's going all out, she's doing what basically the main character, Isaac, Izzy, if you will, has been known to do at the beginning. She's just going all out. She's going cuckoo with her powers, not carrying a fig, unlike the other one, Mokata, as she's called. He's just going all out. She's just going all out, and it's causing her to get weak and stuff, and she's starting to lose, friendships and relationships, and and then eventually it just leads to her reuniting with him and becoming whole again, and him reassuring her that, hey, you're not going to go anywhere. You're always going to be with me because of the fact that you're a part of me. And if I have to, and basically alluding to the fact that he'll bring her out whenever he needs, her around, which I think will play into the 9th part of the series. But overall, it's just kind of weird when you look at all these stories. It's kind of weird. Even Lady Dysomers and Groblik's recent Slime Girl Shenanigans story falls into this category of shape-shifting, liquid girls, whatever you want to call it, because of who it focuses on and what the story is about. Yeah, it's a story that mainly is meant for the adult demographic, no doubt, because of its content. I mean, it would be too hard for even DeviantArt, but still, it is there. It is there, you see it. And when I talk about all these, it's just rambling, kind of weird, that when you look at a lot of these stories nowadays, even though they're fictional stories, that a lot of artists, a lot of storytellers that write the script, apply the scripts to, let's say, the artwork that they're creating, or just writing it out and leaving it to your imagination, it's kind of weird that when you really think about it, that this is a direction not just them, but a lot of people are going in. Mr. Internet Man does it sometimes with Demonica or some characters he comes up with. Ant-Zorson, does it with his Morphica character. Ari009, Arai, if you will. Ari, 001, I should say, not 009, but Ari001 does it with her characters. It's just weird to see the direction a lot of stories are going in. And in a way, now you're starting to see Hollywood take a hold of it in some shape, form, or fashion with upcoming projects themselves, or characters they currently have in shows. So you have to, have to ask yourself, just like I asked in that one video yesterday about, is animation another option for Hollywood to go into for an episode? You have to ask yourself, is, a show or a movie about a character, mostly a female character, and I say it with all due respect, no offense, if that is the next logical step for them to take, to tell a story, or to tell a story in a series or a movie, by having that character, be granted these kind of abilities and just go all out with them. It really makes you think, it really makes you wonder whether or not that's something that is a possibility. But we'll have to see. We will have to see. But let me know what your thoughts are. How do you feel about the potential that, when you look at a lot of the stories now that I mentioned, how do you feel about the fact that now even Hollywood is trying to take, I wouldn't say direct notice, but they're kind of taking some influence, in going in that direction for creative ideas and stuff. What are your thoughts? And do you think it's the next direction they're going to go in? Do you think that'll be the next direction? Do you think, doing movies or a show based on a female character, again, all due respect, no offense, but a female character having these abilities and doing exactly some of the things that I described that these characters are doing, do you think that's the next step for them for movies or shows? Let me know what your thoughts are down below. Comment if you like. I'd love to hear from each and every one of you. Like the video, and I am out. And also discuss in the live chat during the premiere.